back to the Quintessential Real Estate Podcast. Today's episode, I have on Troy Good, who buys properties, holds properties, flips properties, and has a contracting business. So thanks for coming on today, Troy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so I have a contracting business. I've been in business, I think, for 32 years. Started when I was, I think, 21.
Okay.
I remember. Something like that. And so I've been doing that most of the time, but I've been in and out of real estate. I feel like I would have like two different careers in real estate. One was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then I took a break and came back into it full speed in 2019. And then, so since then, we bought about 60 to 70 properties, flipped some, kept some. And then 2 years ago, I started a business with my two oldest boys called Good Family Investors. It was their idea, not mine, actually. They invited me to join them in it. So
That's great.
yeah. And we have, I don't know exactly, but I think we own about 12 properties right now in our first 2 years. So that's going pretty good. And I do a little bit of real estate coaching with a company called LazyGirlREI.com. So,
Okay. So you own some personally, and now you're adding on with your sons in the other
yeah,
side
I
of
have
the
about
business.
25 of my own, and then we have about 12 or 14, and then I own a couple with another investor.
So we've got multiple parties of interest.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty interesting to juggle.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times people are like, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a long time, so I like it. And scaling my construction business to the point where I'm not on the job anymore
Mm-hmm.
was key in doing that because it freed up time to get back into real estate. When I was in real estate the first time around, back in the late 90s, accumulated around 25 units, and my wife was involved in it then, and she did not like it.
Yeah.
So I had 5 kids, young kids, and I was doing everything on my own at that time. So sold everything in 2005, 6, somewhere like that,
Okay.
and stayed out of it. But then a buddy of mine was like, you should buy in Reading. You should buy in Reading. I'm like, no way. I'm not buying in Reading. So I joined a REIA group. You familiar with that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I joined one in Reading, and for like a year, I just went to it to learn and kind of study the market up there.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, I bought a short sale. 2012, I bought another one. And I was like, that's fine,
Mm-hmm.
But then in 2018, I stumbled onto this group, and it was an REI meetup. And I didn't even know what that was, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know what a network meeting was or anything like that. And through that, decided I'm going to get back into this, and kind of thought, well, I'll buy a couple properties. And then it just kind of kept going and kept going. And
Kept feeding the beast.
yeah, so yeah, and so I've always liked real estate.
Yeah.
It made more sense this time around because instead of doing everything myself, I get everyone else to do stuff.
Yeah.
So that I can kind of manage everything from a distance and yet still have a hand in it.
Well, true. And also you're building something with your family on top of that.
Right.
So that adds more purpose to all of it on
Yes.
top of it. You're able to.
And one of the purposes, like we're not just, when we decided to start this investor group, we weren't exactly sure, we still aren't exactly sure where we're going with it, but we know that we wanted to use it to be able to bless other people.
Yeah.
And we've already been able to do that, and there's more opportunities to do that too. So that was one of our core values as a group for that.
Okay. So you started, I might have just missed that. So you started a real estate investing group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, that's awesome.
It's me, myself, my two oldest boys, Brandon and Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacob he does hardscaping. Hasn't been involved. Brandon runs our construction business day to day. And Brandon has a couple of rentals, and I think Jacob started seeing what we were doing and started looking at properties, and then he had Brandon over to watch a webinar. I think it was Chris Crone.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they were like, Jacob was like, we should buy properties together.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So-
that's really cool. I even have like my brothers, one is a teacher around this area, and he sees what I do, and I keep telling him, like, you could get your license and we could do this together.
Yeah.
You could do it right if you really wanted to. It's hard. I mean, it's fun when the other brother is doing something and the other one is interested,
Right.
I'm sure. And then also dad is involved. So
Right.
that makes it even more fun,
Yeah, I mean, so Brandon and Jacob have always been best friends. And we've always gotten along. Like, there's some father-son relationships which are contentious, or maybe there's a lot of arguing, and I don't remember ever arguing with either of them.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure when they're little, obviously,
Sure.
they can tell you stories of how I dealt with them,
yeah.
but as from an adult standpoint, I've never been for partnering. All right. So to do this was, I was
Big
nervous
step.
about it.
Yeah.
Because lots of partnerships, most you see end up splitting. So we went into it. We met for weeks. We meet every Monday morning at 6 for breakfast, and that's how we started. Months before we started, actually. So we talked through things and really came up with a plan that we liked, and understanding that we don't know where it's going to go, but we all have the same core values. I think that really is where it starts. So
where do you buy and why are you buying there?
Great question. So I buy in Berks and Schuylkill. I started out buying all in Berks, like Boyertown, Bechtelsville.
Yep.
Why did I go to Reading? So I bought those deals in the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing.
Okay.
No idea what I was doing. But I mean, my first deal, I got the guy to owner finance it. I didn't know that was a term.
So what is that?
So I'll tell you the story. I'll try and do it
All
quick. I went to look at this 2-unit, and it was a 2 half doubles on 3 acres. And this guy was about 80, and it was a beat up place. And I'm walking through the whole time. I'm thinking, and he lived there his whole life. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, where's this guy going to go? Why is he selling this? So I said to him, Paul, why are you selling this? And he says, I said, no, if I buy this, what are you going to do? He goes, I don't know. I just can't take care of it anymore. And I was like, So that night, the realtor called me, and she was like, hey, I want to tell you, there's 2 other offers coming in. If you want this place, you better put in an offer.
Yeah.
Now, I was young then. I didn't make quick decisions. And I said to her, well, you might think this is weird, but I don't make quick decisions. And if I'm meant to have this place, doesn't matter how many other people put in an offer. She got quiet.
I'm sure the realtor loved hearing that.
Yes.
They're like, I can't believe I took Troy around and see this.
Yes, exactly. So I was just telling her how I felt.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to rush into it.
Uh-huh.
Now I make quick decisions like on some of that stuff, but at the time I wasn't comfortable. So sure enough, 2 days later she calls me. She says, you're never going to believe what happened. She said, I sat down at the table with, I think it was 2 or 3 other offers.
Yeah.
And I explained them all to him, and he looked at me and said, I want to sell it to Troy. I never even made him an offer.
Wow.
And so we worked out a deal. He needed $10,000 down. I didn't have 2 nickels rubbed together.
Yeah.
But I had a business line of credit for $10,000. So I gave him the $10,000. I bought it for $83,000. And he was asking, I think, $90,000. So not far off from what he was asking. Right after I bought it, I got an appraisal on it, appraised for $130,000. So I got my money back to pay off that, and he owner financed it for 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, I was buying a 4-unit in Bechtelsville for like $118,000. So long story short, I go to a settlement, and I'm at, I'm like dressed in my work clothes.
Yeah.
Young at the time, and all these guys in suits are around the table. And all I remember was the attorney turned to me, he said, you're borrowing $250,000 and you only have to pay $250. He said, you must be doing something right. And I remember thinking, yeah, I said, no, I was supposed to get $1,500 back at settlement, but I didn't know it. But I was like, that equity ball was rolling. There was equity in these properties, and they cash flowed. And I had no one teaching me. It just happened. And that's how I got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what your question was. What was it?
So owner financing, where the seller holds the note.
Right. So he held it for 2 years. So when I refinanced and got that 4-unit, paid him off. He continued to rent from me. I was determined not to do anything.
So you let him stay.
Yeah, until he passed away. Yeah. And let me tell you, that was probably that was one of the things I looked at and thought, I need to do more of this, because not only was I able to help him stay there,
Yeah.
can I tell you the benefit I got from going over and sitting on his porch and hearing his stories about his life?
Mm.
I mean, this guy served in World War II. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. Like, I didn't even know what that was, but I do now. And he told me about like stuff like that.
Wow.
It was crazy. So it was an awesome experience. And then after he passed, I sold it. So
Yeah.
but so that's owner financing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was my Berks County buying, and then I started buying in Reading because there was more cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I buy in some of the worst areas, but I've been a landlord a long time. I have a construction company, and I'm very good at dealing with people. It's something I've been doing a long time. So, matter of fact, the person that sold me quite a few places up there used to buy properties in there, and she got out of it because she's like, it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I was showing her one of the properties we finished, and that she had sold me, and she turned to me, she says, "You need to buy more properties here. You got something going on," and so we kind of have a niche, because lots of out of state buyers in D markets lose big time. It's definitely not for everybody.
Why would you say that is?
It's very difficult to manage. It's not like managing in an A or B or even a C area. Totally different. You've got to know the people and how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, I don't think you have to have a face there. Because some people say that they think, well, I want to be there. I want them to see my face on it. You know, that's not the key. It's okay if you want to do it that way. But I can't do that if I have 50 properties.
No.
So it depends how big you want to grow and what type you want to have. But you have to be on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be on top of them. And it takes years of, experience learning how to be firm yet nice.
Yeah.
And handle things. Like, I never want to get a tenant mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
I do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I can deliver disappointing news in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is, we're all human beings. I'm no better than them. And sometimes when people are landlords or they have authority over somebody else, they take that and they look down on other people because maybe they don't have the same thing as they do. Mm. So, but when you look at somebody else, as they're all human beings, we're all God's creatures, right? And that they're no better than me. That's a game changer when it comes to dealing with people.
You had said kind of D range. Mm-hmm. Explain that to me. What and then on top of that, is that kind of your focus? Like that range of renter? Is that
so D range is a low income. I don't know who comes up with these rates. It could be an F. I mean, Reading is not the greatest place. It has changed a lot. So I bought there for cash flow.
Yeah.
I bought a place for $12,000, put $3,000 into it, and it rents for $1,000 a month. I mean, wow. Where can you find those numbers, right?
Yeah.
Now that was in 2019, but last summer I bought a place there for $35,000 that I put $10,000 into it probably, and I rent that for $1,000. That's still great numbers. Okay, so the deals are still out there. They're not as good as they used to be.
All right, so here's a question. Now, this sounds like, so you're more, for your rentals, we're very cash flow focused rather than some investors. Like I have a couple that are in some of the more, I guess, A range, yes, where we're kind of more focused on the appreciation.
Right.
So what made you, obviously you're a victim of proximity no matter what. So you live here in Berks County, maybe that's why, but what made you kind of go that route versus because like the appreciation play?
Right. For the first time around, when I owned the properties in the late 90s, 2000, they didn't cash flow great, and things got tough. Now, when I sold them all, I made really good money.
Yeah.
So this time around, I was like, it wasn't necessarily a decision just to do that. It was the people that I was buying from to start were marketing in Berks County, and a lot of the stuff was coming from there.
Yeah.
So I took it on an individual basis. I wasn't like, I don't have this buy box. I didn't then. But if I could make money, I was going to buy it.
Yeah.
So that's how I approached it. Now things are a little different because, you know, you've got all these properties. I could throw on another 10, 20 properties, but each one requires a certain amount of energy.
Yep.
So when you have a property in a D-class community, it requires more time. It's going to be harder to earn that money. So I wasn't playing the appreciation game. Reading had been, steady, not growing for years. Then all of a sudden, the value started skyrocketing, and I'm like, whoa. So then I was like, well, we're getting a lot of appreciation here, too.
Yeah.
I have one, the one I bought in 2012, I paid $20,000 for it. That's worth like $140 now.
That's awesome.
That one, I just pulled out I don't know anything on it. So I pulled out $70,000. Like, now if I sold it, I have to pay tax on that. But I could take that $70,000. I could do anything I want with it, basically. So that's why I got in for the cash flow. The bonus was the appreciation. Now, I bought other places for appreciation. So it just depends. Why we are investing in Schuylkill County now too. So why Schuylkill County?
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because when we were first starting to form our Good Family Investor Group, this property came up in Shennandoah, which is above Pottsville, and it was a 2-unit. We paid $16,000 for it. We put like $40,000 into it, but we get close to $2,000 a month in rents out of it. And when I started investing there, I can't tell you how many other investors, like good investors that I know from Berks County, were like, Troy, why are you going up there? Are you sure? Like, this is like dead coal country. After I got that one, it piqued my interest, and I started looking around. I started going to all these little towns are in Schuylkill County, and I go up and talk to people at the grocery store. I talk to people sitting on their porch, and I'd ask them, what's happening? What's changed in the last 2 years? I'd ask people specifically who have lived there a long time. Without exception, everyone, their eyes lit up, and they said nearly the same thing. They said, I don't know what's going on, but people are moving here from all over. I'm like, this is interesting. So I started digging in. I started a meetup group that we meet once a month because I noticed there was a need for that. I took over a Facebook group to learn the market and to connect and all that. And now people are investing like crazy. That Shennandoah, which is most would consider the armpit of Schuylkill County, okay? There's some other armpits there, but this is one that everyone, even people from Schuylkill are like, ooh, Shendo, like I wouldn't buy there, right? In the last 4 to 5 years, their population went from 4 to over 8,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the reason?
It's some of the cheapest housing in the country. People and its proximity to New York City. People are moving from New York City there. I have a friend who's an insurance agent. He said 50% of their calls are New York City. Yeah. 90% of the people coming are in New York. Yeah. So they're people who, some of them, because there's lots of blue collar work around there, but it's not just that. People who are working from home. I know somebody who was paying $3,600 a month in rent in Jersey. They bought a house in Shennandoah for $25,000. They work from home. Yeah. So it's crazy what's happening up there. And some people are still very skeptical of it, but I'm telling you, it's booming all over the place. So, yeah. That's why we're buying a Schuylkill.
That's really
unique.
It's
an hour to an hour and a half drive for us. So it has forced me to be even more hands off because I'm naturally a hands-on person. Although if you talk to people who know me now, they think I don't do anything. Yeah. But
so in that, all right, we're an hour and a half away. Are you building out like a different team of contractors in that area?
Okay. And I would say I probably have a better team in Schuylkill than I do around here because it's forced me to find people. And one of the things when we started buying there, people were like, "Oh, wait till you try and find contractors. There are none." And so it has been difficult for sure. It's our hardest thing is finding guys that can do finish work. Yeah. But we've made a lot of great connections and we can that's my job. Finding the connections, making connections, trying out guys and then holding on to the good ones.
Yeah. and then, compensating appropriately to make sure they stay with you.
Right, exactly.
It's better to probably, especially since it's in such a scarcity, you can't let them go.
No. Yeah, and if you treat people good,
Yep.
Feed your contractors, that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find properties? We've got the investment group. We've got overall just bubbly face talking to people, every day up on their porches and whatnot. What are some other ways that you're finding these deals? Are you?
So wholesalers, I buy some through wholesalers a good bit. Out of the properties I bought in the last 60 some properties, none of them have been on the market. Maybe one, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. People that one thing, like I'll give you for example. This guy called me and said, "Hey, I'm a very new wholesaler. I got this property under contract in this part of Schuylkill County, and I don't know you. You don't know me, but I know somebody who knows you through this Facebook group." And he says, "I want you to buy this property," and so I bought that $12,000, right? So that's one way. But networking, I'll tell you another part of the story, which is kind of will give you a clue as to how I find properties. My youngest son moved to Chattanooga, not even a year and a half ago. When he decided to move down there, 2 weeks before, I was like, well, I'm going to take you down. Then I thought, well, if he's going to live down there, I should buy property down there. Give me an excuse to get down and see him, right?
Yeah.
So how do I do that? I got on all the social media, all the Facebook pages related to real estate in that area. I get on, I put a picture. I said, hey, I'm an investor from Pennsylvania. I'm coming to Chattanooga to invest. What do you got?
Yeah.
Well, then I'm flooded with my inbox.
Flooded, I'm sure.
So I'm answering all these realtors, everybody. And then I thought, I'm like, you know what I should do? I should plan a real estate meeting when I go down there where I'm the speaker. So I connected with the wholesaler who arranged it, and we started advertising it. And so I went down there. We had like 40-some people come, all investors mostly, and some realtors. And I made connections that way. And through that, I ended up buying 6.5 acres down there. But then somebody else who knew about the meeting, which was from Nashville, said, hey, any chance you could come speak at our meeting? I said, well, if you have it on this Saturday night, I'll be on my way home. I'll stop in. So I met investors there. So that's a bigger picture of how I connect with people. But then I think doing what you say you're going to do, you can't expect people to bring you deals if you're not buying. So if you know, Quinn, that I'm a buyer and I'm a serious buyer, and if you bring me a deal, I'm gonna come to the table and buy it, you're gonna bring me the deal.
Yeah.
So that really helps. And it's a difference of somebody being in the game and somebody who's saying they're in the game, but they're not really in the game.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about.
I completely understand that. I mean, I see that just too when I'm vetting my buyers,
Right.
Listen, there's a finite amount of time. Your time gets more valuable as you kind of grow with your family too.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be out every night, I need to know for certain that these people are going to transact. And, you have that with just like the pure retail people, trying to buy their primary. But I get a bunch of people who tell me, I want to buy an investment property.
Yeah.
And look, I can show you the couple deals, and it's like, if you're not going to jump, it's going to be really hard for me to keep doing that, because exactly do what you say you're going to do. Your words need to hold water. So,
yeah. So, I make connections and people bring me properties. For the last 5 years, all I hear from all these people are saying, oh, I can't find deals. Right. And Quinn, I'm sitting here thinking, what are they talking about? I can't stop. I keep getting deals, and I'm like, I can't turn them away. But I've had to say no to more deals because I'm just trying to focus, put on the brakes, and say, hey, all right, like we were talking about systems earlier, you got to have your systems right, or the whole thing can implode. So I think, and I've talked to other people who are similar, who have the same issue, like they have too many deals.
Yeah.
So, but talking to people and telling them what you do. And it's not like you're pushing it in their face, but you just tell them. When you introduce yourself, what do you do? I'm a contractor and a real estate investor. That's what I tell them. And then I'm consciously looking at them. If they're like, sometimes they're like, oh, you do real estate investing. That's your opportunity to say, yeah, like, would you do it? And then you get the conversation going. They may not bring you a deal, but they might message you the next week saying, hey, my uncle is wanting to move out of his house. Would you want to buy it?
Yeah, I think that is one of the most unique parts is when you're networking and you're talking with people or just connecting in general, people love to be the guy to bring something to someone else.
That's true. Yeah.
That is like, I got something for you, Quinn.
Yeah.
Like, I got something for you. Yeah. And, they want to show, because it is fun. It is fun to make a connection. Yeah. And it's like, hey, who could, like, sometimes I'll do this with the podcast. I'll just say, who do you think would benefit from this?
Yeah.
Who would enjoy coming on and doing this? And that's honestly like, one of the reasons why I had you on was because another investor say, hey, you should really talk to Troy. I was like, oh, I kind of, I've seen Troy's stuff around, but yeah, I'll ask and see if it is. And I just think that is just funny because people always want to like figure out a way to, be the guy who's doing the introduction or whatever. That's really cool. I mean, to your point about, people complaining they can't find any deals versus the people who are, they're the lion's share of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that in real estate too.
Yeah.
I mean, on the agent side, people are complaining, and I go back to, and I kind of live on this is a job where I can't blame other people for the work that I should have did 3-4 months ago. Yeah. If I'm not doing well, that's Quinn 4 months ago's problem.
Yeah.
And now it's finally come to roost, And if people can't take ownership of something like that, then that's why you don't have deals.
And you got to find a way to make it happen. That's the bottom line. If you're in business and you want to be in business, you've got to you're a problem solver. That is your job. And
real estate is a problem solving business.
Yeah. If you're not finding deals, then you got to solve that problem. When I was in Chattanooga, my son's roommate, who we moved in with, this guy was 21. In his second year in real estate, he had sold 80 deals. 80. You know why? He says, I spend 4 hours a day cold calling.
Yep, that'll do it.
And he says, a lot of people talk about doing it. He said, they don't do it. He says, I get on the clock. He said, I'm doing it. It was either 2 or 4 hours a day. But the guy is killing it because he's doing the work. Because
if you're willing to make the calls, it's going to happen. It's just people want to end up just doing business managing versus business generating. And that's all it is.
Very good point.
No one wants to business generate because guess what? That's hard.
That's the hard part.
And rejection is hard.
Yeah. It's like a garden. They don't want to do the plowing. They just want to do the picking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Is there any type of analytical approach you take when you're looking at properties as far as like percentage of your money going in? I understand you're buying very cheap properties, so that probably makes it a little bit easier to absorb it.
I mean, I don't know that I don't think there's any property that I've bought in the last 5 years that I put any of my own money into it. Okay. That I've not been able to refi and get it all out. I know that sounds crazy or whatever, but when you're buying into, when you're buying in the D areas, you can do that, but they also have to appraise. So even let me just give you an example. In Schuylkill County, we're focusing on the areas in Schuylkill that we think are going to appreciate the most. There's places you can buy and get cash flow, but you're not going to get all your money out of it, which is fine. You still got the cash flow.
Yeah, so you got to leave some money in, but you prefer to be able to get it out.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of how I do it. Just because, and I don't like to be over leveraged. So, so I don't have more than 50% usually on my loan to value either.
It's hard to sleep at night when you're leveraged to the deal.
Yeah.
You talk about you're not really buying deals off of MLS. So in terms of realtors, what do you think of them? You got any bad stories?
Oh yeah.
Let's hear a few.
One of the flips I did in Reading, I was selling it, and the buyer's agent was awful. Like, he just downright lied. Now how they're supposed to, every time they go in, they're supposed to have log in somehow. Like
through showing time, scheduling service.
Yeah, this guy, he somehow went in and took a city inspector in to do a city inspection, which you can't just dial that up yourself.
For a buyer?
Yes.
The UNO?
Yes.
Interesting.
They had, and then literally 2 days before settlement, they had another, he says, we have another inspector coming in. And I'm like, and it is a long story, but I said to him, I said, listen, if this doesn't sell by Wednesday, I said, first of all, your inspector comes in. I said, I don't care what he finds. I'm not giving you another penny back, nothing. And I said, if this doesn't sell by Wednesday, I said, I'm going to ruin your career. I said, this is going to settle by Wednesday. I said, you lied, you broke and entered into my property, like you did all this stuff. I said, I'm going to take you to the cleaners. I said, so you better get this thing to settlement and get it done. And I mean, I didn't follow through at settlement. It was difficult shaking his hand, but I did it.
You didn't just sign a deed package and not show up?
I should have. But no, I wanted to see him.
Yeah. At that point, you have the moral high ground.
Yeah.
So
he was just a bad. And so he was just a bad agent. And then the loan officer that I was trying to deal with that one, you couldn't get a hold of him. Yeah. So I had an email, I had the phone number at the office, and somehow I had her cell phone number. And so they weren't getting back to me, and I needed answers. I was on a Monday morning, I'm like, starting 9 o'clock, I'm calling the office, the email, and the text every 15 minutes until they get back to me. And I did that for an hour and a half. And I would just say, I'm not stopping. And my next step was to show up at the door and get in there because I needed answers. And when they got on the phone, I was like, listen, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you need to answer. You need to follow through because I want this thing to get to.
It's a business transaction.
Yeah. The frustrating thing about dealing with settlement, realtors and stuff like that is you're always the one pushing. Like you're always the one that has to make it happen or it won't, because they don't care about it as much as you do.
Yeah, nobody cares. I say this all the time. No one cares as much as you do about your situation. Like that's the reality of it.
So you have to be my dad used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I can be annoying like that, but then I just back it off and say, listen, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I need this to happen. Yeah. And sorry if you hate me right now.
No, I say that all the time. I'll call my lender, I'll call my title company and be like, hey, are my buyers doing everything they're supposed to be doing right now? And it's like, because I'll call them. Like, I have no problem doing that if that's the case. And they're like, we know you're very, like, you push things to the point of, like, I'll make my title company much more uncomfortable than they want to be. But, like, it just, like, I need answers. And, like, that exactly is the point. Like, the squeaky wheel gets it. It's so true in life in general. It's like, you just have to be talking. And real estate is just one big communication game.
Yes.
I just tell people, like, this is not that difficult. But some people, they don't want to call.
So
they don't want to pick up the phone.
When you have a good realtor, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And when you have a bad one, you'll know.
I can't tell you what it is, but you'll know.
You'll know. When you've had, it's like title companies, right? I have a favorite.
Yeah.
Stewart Abstract and Why Missing. And Barb Camerano is my title agent. And I mean, I've used other title companies up in Schuylkill. Some are good, but some are not good.
Well, that's exactly what happened in during COVID. My company that I use for all my transactions, Patriot Land Transfer in Royersford, they decided they weren't going anywhere during COVID. So they wouldn't do settlements in Philly. So I was like, oh my goodness, I have I work in Philly a decent amount, but I don't like their title companies because I had to do like 3 deals with these title companies and they were just dropping the ball. You couldn't get to the main guy. And I'm just like, just tell me we're good. Like send me, so yeah, it's all about who you work with and like with real estate and your team that you're kind of setting up and whatnot.
Yeah. And so, there's a huge team. We talked about teams earlier and these are all important parts of the team.
Yeah.
And if you can't work with them and you have one part of the team that's not pulling their weight. Yeah. They're going to be replaced. It's just a marathon.
Yeah. So you said that situation where you were selling the property made it sound like, so you were communicating with the buyer's agent. Were you selling that like for sale by owner, or how do you do when you?
I had an agent.
What's the agent doing in this process? You're calling?
This is a while ago.
Sounds like the wild, wild west here.
Well, okay.
I would have fired you. Oh my gosh.
I got to the point where I was like, I guess I overstepped, but I was just like, I didn't care at that point. I was like, I was taking control. And I think, I don't know if that's just me. that's just in business. There's times where it's all relying on you, and like so.
Yeah, you're like,
I'm
this
not
person doesn't
concerned.
care.
There's times where I'm not concerned if I'm offending people or not. Like I'm getting to that finish line.
Yeah.
And if you're in the way, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I do it in a nice way. But in that situation, I had to take control, and I had to talk to that other agent and let him know, listen, this is what's happening. And because sometimes when you go through an agent, they're not gonna send the same message. Maybe. I think it's very important when dealing with your agent. Yes, they have your back, but you have to be very clear with them your feelings, and because they're going to translate that. In this situation, this guy was doing things illegal. It was a bunch of stuff, and I was just like, I wanted to. I was mad because he obviously had somebody on the inside in the city who he brought out to do an inspection. I'm like, this is totally not right.
Yeah.
So there was some legal stuff I was trying to get to the bottom of as well. But
I like that point you made about, from a seller or buyer perspective of just really telling your agent everything that you're thinking, because I will have times where I'm like, oh my goodness, like you needed to tell me that. If this was a problem, like, because I'm all about like, get it all out now, manage expectations after it, and we're going to have a decent transaction.
Yeah.
That's how it is. But then there'll be times where it's like, well, we were actually thinking this. And I'm like, oh my word, I wouldn't have pushed. I wouldn't have pushed. I just had a listing where I got the listing, and then I spent the whole time. They told me they were going to buy after. So I spent the whole time like just giving the pros. Like I can go either way. Like there's always a time to rent. There's always a time to buy when you're making a transition. And I got off the phone, and the husband called and was like, hey, we're actually not looking to like buy. I think we're going to rent. And I was like, oh my gosh, like
would have been nice.
It would have been nice. I put my foot in my mouth, just like that. And because if I know the whole situation, like I would have never talked to you, and we didn't. He ended up renting, but it's like, then it just sounds like because I am not a guy who is like, I don't have commission breath. I don't care if I get a deal. I just want to help. And it's like, I'm not going to tell you to buy something if you're going to have to sell it in 2 more years. That's ridiculous. Right. And if you don't have all the ingredients to the deal, it really can come. One, you come off like a jerk. Yeah. And two, it's like, that was never the intention in the first place. Like, and it's always hard to pull information out of, because it's all personal and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, no, I really like that point. So if everybody who is listening to this is a buyer and seller, tell your agent what you need.
Yeah,
and
just communicate. Don't let them be guessing what your intentions are, how you feel, because again, it's all a relationship. If you have a private money lender, it's a relationship typically, and it's a matter of having the right match. There's buyers or sellers or whatever that aren't probably a match for you, and you got to know that. I think when you talk about partnerships too, I want to clarify something I said earlier about not liking any partnerships. Like when you form an LLC, that's a marriage, right? But like creating a partnership to flip a house is not nearly the same as that. There's a very specific beginning and end to that. Yeah. Much like when we do a contract job for somebody, I know, and I'm keenly aware that this person I'm signing the contract with, I'm entering a relationship with them. They don't really know it, but when a contractor comes, they're also interviewing you. Like, we're in a totally different game now when it comes to contracting. There's plenty of work out there, so we can almost cherry pick the jobs we want anymore. It didn't used to be like that. And so there's times where I'll say, I was looking at a big job with this guy, and partway through he goes, yeah, I've had a couple worked for some other contractors. People have trouble getting along with me. I'm like, yeah, I was sensing that.
Red flag.
Yeah, big red flag. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to.
It's a big job too.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
tying
exactly.
everybody up.
Right.
Capital out. Yeah.
So, yeah, the relationship part of it and working with people and partners that align with you, I would say, that you can deal with. Because in a contract situation with a job, when things hit the fan is when, like, everybody gets along when everything's going well.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when we have a problem? How are we going to work those out?
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the things that we're very good at, working with people and finding solutions to the problems that like on a job or in real estate.
Yeah.
And people appreciate that.
It sounds like you addressed them when they come
Yeah.
up rather than, they're like, I mean, on my end, just people not picking up the phone for an entire week to tell me that there was an issue. It's like, just tell me, I understand these conversations suck, but
Right.
if we can do this, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
It's all problem solving. It's all people.
Yeah.
We can make this work. But if you wait till the last second, I'm going to be pissed and other people will be pissed. And you make this so much harder.
I think as you get older, like, I've learned not to shy away from those things, but just to confront them head on and be like, listen, this is not going to be a fun conversation, but we have to talk about this and just go through it. And you got to push through that stuff, and people appreciate it. And if people trust one another, if you trust the other person and you know that they have your best interest at heart, they're going to be in it with you. And that's kind of how I would address it. We're in this together. How do we solve this problem? Not this is what I want,
Yeah.
So
What makes an investor-friendly realtor?
Well, as we talked about earlier, very small percentage of realtors own real estate. I want to say, like, outside of their personal home, I think it's maybe 5%. It's low. So there's a huge difference between realtors that don't invest and realtors who do invest, or realtors that deal with investors. Why don't more realtors deal with investors? Reasons like, well, they think they're going to lowball, or we're going to show them a bunch of properties, they won't buy them. But I'd say a realtor that is investor friendly, they have to understand the mindset of the investor and really look for what they want and what they're looking for from an investment standpoint. One thing that is sorely lacking that I wish more realtors would know how to do, and that's really analyze properties. So an investor-friendly realtor is going to know how to analyze a property, which makes a huge difference, because I can't tell you 99% of the time when a realtor brings an investment property to me and they tell me, oh, these numbers look great, and they don't have all the numbers. They never have all the numbers. And they'll say, well, the maintenance the guy does himself, so there's really not much maintenance. No, there's a lot of maintenance. You have to figure it in. And whether I know any of their numbers or not, I already can analyze the property based on what is typical, right? But if you have the exact numbers, that sure helps. So investor friendly is one who understands that. So they're not bringing stuff to me that, like, we already know is not a deal.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, no, Quinn. Somebody who likes, I would say the biggest thing, we talked about this before, is a realtor who's also in the game, who knows who buys real estate. Now, if you're an investor friendly realtor, oftentimes I had one, and she brought me this deal, and she'd send me this deal, and I'd be like, come on. I said, listen, let's be honest. If it's a deal, you're going to buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So does make it a little more difficult. But there are investor friendly realtors who aren't ready to buy, or
it's different. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's how I treat it. I just go, I'm not at a point where I'm doing this deal. So you are a small list of people who has showed loyalty to me, and we're going to look at this.
Right.
So I do get that. Like, timing is a big deal. There's there's plenty of people who they're just not transacting, and they just might be realtors. That's what they do.
Or maybe they're not buying right now, and so, like, there's stuff that comes to me, and I'm like, I don't want to buy right now, and I'll pass it to somebody else. Yeah. An investor friendly realtor, I'll give you an example. In Schuylkill County, one of the best realtors up there, got a property from one of her investors who they wanted to offload. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I can put this on the market, but I have somebody I think might want this. brought it to us, and we bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why? She knew a lot of things there. She knew she could get this guy his property sold quickly for the money he wanted, and he knew, or she knew, that we were buying in that area, and that there was a good chance we would buy it if the numbers made sense. She already knew the numbers, right? So
yeah, she just marries the two.
right,
That's all it was.
puts them together.
Easiest transaction ever, but that's because she was in it and invested in it. Interview your agent. Ask them pointed questions. It's not that difficult. You need to pressure them and really see what they know.
And also, don't be afraid to move on from your agent if they're not. That's a hard lesson. Just yesterday, I drove by a property that I looked at years ago, and it was like a 6-unit property, and I didn't get it. I called my realtor, and they didn't get back to me for 4 or 5 days. In that time, it was gone.
4 or 5 days?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Sounds like a nightmare.
So a good realtor, and I know from time is of the essence, right?
Yeah.
Especially and I know as a realtor, it's a pain. You get everyone's on a Friday night, they're on their computers looking at properties and like, can you show me this one like tomorrow morning?
Yep.
Like, because you're not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
So I understand that part is frustrating, but your realtor needs to be responsive to you, and get answers. I will tell when I call different realtors about properties, I'm like, I know I'm being a pain. I said, but I want to see this tomorrow. I want to see it. So can you get me in there somehow? You know
that, and I put it the other way. Like one of my investors, when he texts me that he is ready, I drop everything because I know he's transacting.
Yeah,
and I know it's valuable that I am in the deal.
Right.
And he needs to know I have his back. And that's the most important thing is his time is extremely valuable.
Right.
And he is going to make time to do this thing and is choosing to use me.
Yeah.
And like, if you can't see that, like that's what everybody's doing. And it's, it's hard because you also have a bunch of other clients too. Yeah. And you're trying to work through it like, every night too. Some people work 9 to 5 and I have a family, but that is just the one thing where I've always said, it's like, I will get text. Like I'm thinking of one person specifically, like he is texting me like at 11:30 at night for tomorrow morning. And I'm just like, all right, we'll make it work. Yeah. Like, and I'm riding down to Philly and we're checking these out because guess what? There's a high probability that he's going to buy one of those homes.
Right. Exactly.
And guess what? It's
because he's already analyzed them enough to know that he's not wasting your time.
Yeah, right. No, there's been no time wasted. Like I am like, this is totally worth my time. And also, I want to see this guy do well. And, he's got good purpose behind it. But responsiveness in the agent community can sometimes be difficult, even for me, talking with, listing agents and stuff. But when you hear the stories of, a realtor never got us into that property. Yeah. Like, how can that be?
And in this market, the time, that's make or break. Yeah. We're not in a market where you have 2 or 3 days. Like when something comes on the market, and I'm not opposed to buying on the market. And I do think especially now, there are deals on the market. Expired listings are one good ones to go after. But with the interest rates going up, there's a handful or a decent amount of people who have backed off because of those interest rates, at least initially. I don't really care what the interest rates are. If the numbers work, if it's 10, 20%, doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, you're using hard money here and there, so 16%,
Yeah.
Half of that probably doesn't scare you.
I don't pay that.
I know.
Anymore, but but the numbers are what they are. And if you like the whole interest rate thing, people are like, I'm going to wait till the interest rates go down. Well, when you do that, you're going to, as soon as they drop some, lots more people are going to be in the market.
Yeah, everybody's purchase power comes back. What do you think is going to happen?
But if you buy it now, let's say it's 7%, and the interest rates go up to 9%, well, now all of a sudden it was like, oh, that was a good idea. Yeah. But if you buy it now at 7 and then it drops to 5, you're like, just refinance. So, but if it makes sense at 7, you're good. So.
It makes sense when you're trying to buy it. That's all that matters. Right. And then hopefully, best case scenario, you get the refinance. Right. Worst case scenario, you got in before it went all the way up.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's What was COVID like?
So I looked at it as a huge opportunity. We were in the middle of a flip then. One flip. I know I bought 2 properties. Let's see, when COVID came, it was like in the middle of March or something like that, right?
Yep.
Within that next month, I bought at least 2 properties. I know I got them because most people.
Everybody
put on
went
the
away.
brakes.
Yeah.
They put on the brakes. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I know I got them at a good deal because of that. The flip we were trying to sell, the realtor was like, we had an offer from somebody down in Philly, and but there was a sight unseen, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. I'm not getting under contract just so they can hold us there.
Yep.
I said they need to come out and see it, and my realtor was like, well, I can't show it. I said,
yep.
well, I can show it. I'm not a realtor. I said, so send them out.
Yeah.
I'll unlock the door. I'll sit in my car. They can come in, and then I was like, well, we can't get anybody to do a home inspection. I said, I'll find somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll make it happen. People still need to eat,
Yep.
And right. So kind of pushed through that.
Okay. That's a good answer. That wasn't quite what I meant. So we own 40 rental properties. Mm-hmm. What was it like when they weren't working?
Right. Great question. So, and I've watched podcasts and read articles from people who say in a down market, D-class communities are horrific. I found out that in a D-class community where lots of people are already getting lots of freebies, mm-hmm. they made more money than ever. I didn't lose a one dime from lack of rent.
Really?
No. Now, some people did.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones I heard lost were not in D markets. So I had one tenant who missed work for a couple weeks, and so he got behind. The judges, I can tell you this, like to evict somebody, how was it working? The judges just weren't evicting people, even though people had to prove that they lost their job because of COVID. Well, that was pretty tough to do, but the judges didn't care. They were scared, so they weren't evicting people. So my leases, I only do month-to-month leases.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I won't do longer than that because the lease only binds the landlord. When people want to move out, they just move out because they know you can try coming after them for money. Good luck. You're not going to get it most of the time.
That's a great point.
I was just like, that's how I've always done it. Now lots of people do it that way. So what happens is, like, I had somebody who was behind in rent, not because of COVID. They were just behind in rent, but it was during COVID. So when I took them to court, I gave them a 30-day notice. And the notice was, I'm not renewing the lease.
Yeah.
So when I got to court, the judge, who was very tenant-friendly, okay, and who has turned many other people down, I found out, but I just happened to be not the first one in, so I knew what to do. And she says, why do they owe you money? I said, it's irrelevant. I said, doesn't matter if they owe, that's not what we're here about. And she goes, well, why are you evicting them? I said, they don't have a lease. I said, I didn't renew their lease. And she says, well, did you give them 30-day notice? And then I gave her the documentation. She smiled, looked up at me and says, congratulations, you're the first one that got this right.
Oh my gosh.
So there was nothing she could do.
Yeah.
Like, they were in my place without a lease. So that's how I was able to remove them. So
wow.
So COVID did
I love that strategy though. I haven't heard too many people in these parts kind of talk about that. Do a month to month because then, hey, we're at risk for vacancy rates and whatnot. And, we just want to lock them in.
Yeah.
But if something happens for 6 months, they're still in a lease.
You should ask some people that landlords have been landlord a long time. How many people that you've evicted have you ever gotten the money from afterwards? Very few. You know how hard it is? First of all, you have to find them. You got to find out where they move. So then you can, if they have a job and they've had a steady job for years and they're not going to quit that job, and I'm going down this route with somebody now to just kind of see how hard it is and see if it works. You can actually get the employer to garnish their wages.
Yeah.
But then if they quit that job, go to another one. You got to kind of get through the whole process again.
Gosh.
So I haven't had to evict a lot of people. I mean, it sounds like I am, but I haven't had to. I've always felt like I could work with people, and then like there's one guy, he was behind. I said, "Listen, we know you're not catching up." I said, "You need to. I'm either going to evict you, which then you'll have an eviction on your record. You don't want that. How many landlords will rent to somebody who has an eviction on their record? Not many.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother subject, which is you should probably talk about, because on a national level, they're trying to make it illegal for you to discriminate. In Minersville, the town is saying if there's an eviction on your record, you can't live here.
I was talking with someone about this in Florida. In Florida, if you get an eviction, you can no longer rent in the state of Florida.
Yes, but this city is doing it. They're also saying if you have a felony offense, and then if your landlord and your tenants, the cops get called to your tenant's place 3 times, you have to evict them, and they can't live in the city anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's great. So yeah, you didn't have too many issues with people saying I don't need to pay because nobody's paying. There are people not paying their mortgages. They're doing that.
I did have a tenant who they were in there. They were paying for a couple of years, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they said, "Hey, I'm getting rental assistance. This company's going to pay my rent for a year." So that started 2 months into it. They ran out of money.
The assistance program.
Yeah. So then she stopped paying. Well, when we get to court, eventually I said to her, "Well, I'm going to have to evict you."
Yeah.
And she says, "Great, because once I go to court, they will actually, if I get an eviction, they will give me the money to pay you." Right in court, they do that. They assign them to somebody. But this is what I was getting to. The judge asked her, "Well, why did you stop paying?" And she goes, "Well, I quit my job once I got that rental assistance, because why do I need a job if I'm getting somebody to pay my rent?" Isn't that crazy? Now, fast forward, they did pay her all her back rent, and she got a job again, and she's doing great. But it's certainly a great example of mentality that's out there.
That is a really good example.
Yeah.
I've talked with people who goes, I get 80% on unemployment. That's once you take out gas and whatnot. We're right there.
Yeah.
We're right there. I'm like, you make a good point. If you
Yeah.
work in the system, I can't blame you. I can blame the system now. And
we did a job. We did a job for somebody, and she was unemployed, getting all the benefits and stuff, and then went to get nursing school, become a nurse. And again, all of this was paid for.
Yeah.
And she said, the more I make, the less they give me. And she said, honestly, I'm working so hard just to, pay for all this.
Mm-hmm.
It was easier when I didn't have to work.
Yeah.
But she says, but I don't want to be that person. Know? So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a quagmire for sure.
When there's more incentive to not work, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So Quinn, that goes back to my answer about working in the city and working with D-class community. You've got to know the mentality of the people you're dealing with. That goes a long way in helping you to understand and to deal with them when it comes to being a landlord.
That's good. So. All right, last question. So if I'm a newbie who said they just want to get started, what would you say to them? And, best lessons you've learned in real estate.
So a newbie wants to get involved in real estate investing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say connect with people who are doing it. And essentially finding a partner to work with. One of the biggest things is finding a deal, right? Mm-hmm. If you find a deal, and it's a good deal, you'll find a partner. Now, you think a lot of newbies think everything's a deal, or they think they have trouble analyzing it.
Yeah.
That's all part of it. Mm-hmm. But I would say look at it, look for somebody to partner with, try and find some deals, start looking. And then what was your other question about for lessons?
Yeah, so your best lessons that you've learned in real estate.
The whole equity snowball. You can condense time when you do that, and you can do things. A lot of people are like, well, you just want to make a lot of money. You can do a lot of good things with money. You can help out a lot of people with money. And so I think that's one of the things I enjoy about real estate the most, that I get to work with people. I'm in a position where I can help people, whether it's financially or whatever. Mm-hmm. Lessons that I've learned, systems are super important when it comes to any business, but it's one thing if you're going to start and you buy 1, 2, 3 and you manage them, it's fine. once you get to that 10 mark and then beyond, your systems or lack thereof are going to make or break you. Mm-hmm. And so I would say along that path, keep adding to and sharpening your systems. Add the pieces to the puzzle as you grow. Like I have a bookkeeper now, mm-hmm. And I couldn't live without them. Like I pay them pretty well, I think. They're very patient with me because they have to be. Mm-hmm. But I could never have grown to the point where I'm at now without that. I couldn't sustain what I'm doing with that because I'm not I'm a people person. I'm mm-hmm. not a bookkeeper. I'm not good at it. Mm-hmm. For years I tried to because
you had to.
Because right? I thought, well, I got to do things I'm not good at too. No, I got to concentrate on what I'm good at. And this bookkeeper loves what they do, and they're great at it. And so that's a piece of the puzzle. I couldn't scale what I was doing without that. So putting the pieces of the puzzle together as you grow, you can't go out and do it all at once. You can't hire a bookkeeper all at once because you won't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So I think partnering is huge, and starting out with base hits, not swinging for the fence home runs. Like we talked before, we got on here about, you were the one deal you really wanted, but somebody told you you're not ready for this, mm-hmm. and that's hard to hear that. And you want and we listen to all these motivational stuff on Facebook and social media, like, oh, you can do this and you can do this. Yeah, but get involved where you can, when you can, in the beginning, and build. You buy one rental, get that bought, fixed up, or refinanced. You're learning all along the way, dealing with tenants, dealing with contractors, the refi process, all that. And as you're doing that, and you're buying 1, 2, 3, 4, next thing you know, you're building equity at the same time, and it gives you more opportunity to buy something bigger. Mm-hmm. And I would say, don't be afraid. Like I flipped a couple trailers, and one time an investor said, "Why are you flipping a trailer?" I'm like, "Why not?" They're like, "It's a trailer." I'm like, "I don't care if it's an old chicken coop. If I can buy it, fix it up, and make money, I'm going to do it." Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, dollar for dollar. I spent $6,000 on it, put 9 into it, and sold it for 25, $15,000, and I made 25. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So
money's money.
Yeah, it is. Money's money. So, and be flexible. You kind of have to. You can have your plan.
Yeah.
And you can have your goal, but understand, and you should constantly be reevaluating and retooling that. But at the same time, be flexible to make changes. And this is my last story. To this one guy, I also run a guys only real estate meetup group. So you haven't been to that?
No, I've been meaning to get there. It's during the weeknights. It's really hard sometimes.
We're going to start doing some during the day too.
Okay, well then I'm definitely going to be good for that.
But this one guy was like, for over a 2-year period, I'd see him a few times, and he was like determined that he was buying a 2-unit.
Yeah.
And finally I said to him, will you just buy something? Find a deal that makes sense and just buy it and start making money. How many people have we talked to in the last year or two who said, 2 years ago I saw them and they were like, no, I'm not buying anything yet. And now they wish they would have bought. So now they say the best time to buy is like yesterday. Yep. But the next best time is now. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that in real estate. The people say, well, things could go down. The national average price of homes goes up every year. It went up every year from 1942 to 2008.
Yep.
Now, there's markets now. If you go in Florida, their values are dropping right now, or whatever. But it's a pretty safe bet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's 4% average year over year. I think there was 1 year nationally in 1990 where it went 1% down or something like that. And then there was another year in the 50s where it went down a couple percent.
Yeah.
That's it. Just hold it for more than 2 years. Yeah. That's it.
The thing is, you can make a lot of mistakes in real estate. And if you hold on, you will work out of it. Because the appreciation, things are going up in value. It's getting paid down as long as you're maintaining that building, and you're going to win. So great way to build wealth, not just for yourself, but for others.
Yeah. Well, this has been all great, just talking through with someone who has, 30 years plus experience with real estate investing. So thanks for coming on, Troy.
You're welcome.
We
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
me.
it. Yeah.